The barrier hummed with a frequency that made teeth ache and bones vibrate. Captain Yuki Okonkwo stood on the observation deck of the Lagos space station, watching the blue shimmer that now imprisoned 8 billion souls. She'd been born in the void between Earth and Mars, raised on stories of distant stars and alien wonders. Now those stars might as well be painted on canvas, beautiful, unreachable, meaningless. "They're calling it the Great Shame," said her co-pilot, Lieutenant James Park, joining her at the window. "The networks won't stop talking about it. Half the planet thinks we should have accepted their terms." "The other half?" Yuki asked. "Angry, scared. Building bunkers in their basements." James sighed. "My mother called this morning. Asked if I thought we'd be extinct in a year." Yuki turned from the window. At 32, she was young for a captain, but the war with the asteroid miners had aged her in ways that didn't show on her face. She'd learned that survival wasn't about strength, it was about adaptation. "Your mother raised you on stories of our ancestors, didn't she? The ones who survived everything history threw at them?" "She did." "Then she already knows the answer." Yuki straightened her uniform. "Come on. The summit starts in an hour." The Global Emergency Summit connected every major leader through quantum-encrypted channels. Yuki attended as military liaison, representing the voices of 30,000 service members who'd watched their purpose evaporate overnight. No more patrol missions beyond the barrier. No more deep space exploration. Just an endless orbit around a cage they couldn't escape. President Adeyemi's face filled the central screen, exhaustion carved into every line. "We face a choice," she began without preamble. "Some coalition members have sent private messages. They suggest that if we remove Dr. Chen from office, denounce her findings as falsified and formally apologize, the barrier might be lifted. We would still need to accept their oversight, but at least we wouldn't be alone." "That's not a choice," Yuki said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "That's surrender with extra steps." "Captain Okonkwo," snapped Minister Volkov from the Russian delegation. "You're military, not diplomatic. This decision requires nuance." "This decision requires a spine," Yuki interrupted. "They want us to betray the person who told us the truth. They want us to accept punishment for the crime of having self-respect. And in exchange, they'll give us the privilege of erasing ourselves slowly instead of quickly." "We're talking about survival," Minister Chin argued. "Without access to outer galaxies, our resources are finite. Within 2 centuries, maybe 3, we'll strip this solar system bare. Then we'd better get creative." Yuki pulled up a holographic display. "I've spent the last 72 hours talking to people the coalition would consider beneath their notice. Engineers, miners, scientists who don't have fancy degrees but know how to make things work. You want to know what they told me?" She expanded the display, showing blueprints and data streams. "Mars isn't just a colony, it's a potential second Earth. We've been treating it like a vacation home when we should be treating it like a lifeboat. Venus has resources we haven't touched because we were too busy looking outward. The asteroid belt contains more raw materials than Earth has mined in its entire history. And our scientists have been working on something the coalition doesn't know about." Dr. Okafor's image flickered to attention. "Captain, that research is classified." "Not anymore," Yuki said firmly. "Show them." The display changed, revealing designs for a propulsion system that didn't rely on coalition technology. It was crude, experimental, and barely functional. But it was theirs. "We've been studying the barrier," Dr. Okafor explained reluctantly. "It operates on principles we don't fully understand, but we've noticed fluctuations. Weaknesses. We think, given time and resources, we might be able to develop our own method of faster-than-light travel. Something that doesn't use their hyperspace lanes." The chamber fell silent. President Adeyemi leaned forward. "How much time?" 50 years. Maybe 100. "That's generations," someone protested. "That's nothing," Yuki countered. "The coalition thinks in millennia. They expect us to panic, to break within decades. They don't understand that we've survived ice ages and plagues and wars that should have ended us. We're the species that looked at rocks and invented tools. That looked at fire and invented civilization. That looked at the sky and invented flight. You think a barrier is going to stop us?" She stood straighter, feeling the weight of her ancestors behind her. Every human who'd ever refused to quit, refused to kneel, refused to accept that this was as good as it gets. They offered us membership in their club and we said no. Not because we're proud. Not because we're stupid. But because joining meant becoming less than what we are. They wanted to sand down our edges, smooth out our differences, turn us into another obedient species that says thank you when they're robbed. So what do you propose? President Adeyemi asked quietly. We vote. Right now. Do we send a message of apology and submission, or do we tell the coalition that Earth's answer remains no? The vote took 3 minutes. 170 nations participated. 168 voted to refuse. 2 abstained. None chose submission. Yuki composed the message herself, keeping it simple. Earth acknowledges your containment. We decline to seek its removal under your proposed terms. We will contact you when we are ready to meet as equals. Regards, humanity. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The response came back within an hour. Just 2 words, you won't survive. Yuki read it aloud to her crew, then deleted it. Well, she said, allowing herself a grim smile, they don't know us very well, do they? Lieutenant Park looked at the barrier, still shimmering beyond the station windows. What happens now? Now. Yuki turned away from the prison that surrounded them. Now we get to work. The viewing chamber felt too large for such an intimate betrayal. Dr. Amara Chen stood before the transparent wall, watching 3 ships materialize from quantum space like silver ghosts emerging from fog. They were beautiful in the way that predators are beautiful. Sleek, purposeful, and utterly cold. Behind her, the new Geneva Space Council held its collective breath. They're early, whispered Director Hassan, his weathered hands gripping the railing. That's not a good sign. Amara didn't turn around. She'd spent 5 years preparing for this moment, learning 17 alien languages, studying 400 cultures, and reviewing every first contact scenario in human history. None of it mattered now. The coalition had come to deliver their judgment, and she suspected humanity wouldn't like the verdict. The lead ship was called the Harmonious Purpose, which Amara found darkly amusing. In her experience, anyone who named their warship after peace was usually planning violence. The vessel docked with practiced precision, and within minutes the coalition delegation entered the council chambers. Ambassador Trell9 moved like flowing water, his form shifting between solid and liquid states as his species had evolved to do. Behind him came the Overseer Council, beings who had ruled known space for 3,000 years. They looked at the assembled humans with expressions Amara had learned to read. Pity. Condescension. Disappointment. We welcome you to Earth, Amara said in perfect stellar common, the coalition's primary language. We are honored by your presence. Trell9's form solidified into something vaguely humanoid. Dr. Chin. Your reputation precedes you. We understand you speak 47 languages? 52 now, she replied. Impressive for such a short-lived species. The words landed like a slap, but Amara kept her expression neutral. We have come to extend an invitation. The coalition recognizes that Earth has reached sufficient technological development to join galactic civilization. Director Hassan stepped forward. This is wonderful news. Under certain conditions, Trell9 continued, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Earth must accept coalition oversight. Your military will be disbanded. Your governments will adopt coalition law. A guardian species will be assigned to guide your cultural development for the next 500 years. These terms are not negotiable. They are the price of admission to civilized space. The chamber erupted in whispers. Amara felt her stomach twist. This wasn't an invitation, it was annexation dressed in diplomatic language. May we have time to consider? She asked carefully. 48 hours, Trell9 replied. We believe this is generous, given your circumstances. That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She reviewed every document the coalition had provided, searching for loopholes, alternatives, anything. At 3 a.m. she found it, buried in environmental reports, hidden among thousands of pages of bureaucratic noise. The coalition had been harvesting resources from 14 pre-contact worlds, draining them systematically while their inhabitants remained unaware. Her hands shook as she compiled the evidence. This was what the coalition did. They didn't invite species to join them. They absorbed them, erased them, turned them into compliant shadows of themselves. When she presented her findings to the council the next morning, Director Hassan went pale. If we refuse, they'll isolate us. If we accept, we disappear, Amara countered. Everything that makes us human, our languages, our cultures, our right to make our own mistakes, gone. Replaced by their version of who we should be. The vote was called. The debate lasted 18 hours. In the end, 47 nations voted to refuse. 3 abstained. None voted to accept. Amara delivered the news herself, standing before Trell9 in the same chamber where this had begun. We are grateful for your offer, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. But Earth must respectfully decline. We will find our own path forward. Trelnina's form rippled with what might have been amusement or anger. Amara couldn't tell. You choose isolation over enlightenment. Very well. The coalition will respect your decision. Thank you for understanding. In 72 hours, a containment field will be erected around your solar system. No ships in. No ships out. When you are ready to accept wisdom, signal us. If your species survives long enough. He turned to leave, then paused. Most don't, Dr. Chin. Most don't. The coalition ships departed at dawn. 3 days later, a shimmer of blue light spread across the sky like a curtain falling on a stage. Amara watched it happen from her apartment window, drinking cold coffee and wondering if she'd just saved humanity or doomed it. Her tablet buzzed with a message from Director Hassan. History will remember this day. Let's hope we're around to write it. Amara set down her cup and allowed herself a small, defiant smile. The galaxy had tried to cage Earth. Now they would learn what humanity did when backed into a corner. They evolved. The colony hung in the darkness like a jewel someone had dropped between couch cushions. Unexpected, precious, and absolutely not where it was supposed to be. Engineer Rashid Volkov floated in the observation bubble, watching construction drones weave structural supports through the void. 80 years had passed since the barrier rose, and humanity had spent every single day of those 8 decades refusing to accept their sentence. Section 7 is complete, reported his assistant, Minjun, her voice crackling through the comm. That's the last of the residential rings. We can start bringing families through next month. Rashid smiled, remembering his grandmother's stories about Captain Okonkwo's speech, the vote that changed everything, the moment Earth chose dignity over survival. Except they'd gotten both. My grandmother would have loved to see this. The woman who helped crack fold space theory? She did see it. We built the first colony on her mathematics. I meant this one specifically. Colony 17. The one that's not supposed to exist. The station they'd built was impossible by coalition standards. It existed in a pocket of folded space, accessible only through tears in reality that human scientists had learned to open and close like doors. The coalition's barriers surrounded Earth's solar system, but it didn't account for spaces that technically weren't anywhere at all. Humanity had learned to step sideways through the universe. Rashid was reviewing supply manifests when the alarm started screaming. His heart lurched into his throat as he pulled up the security feeds. 3 ships had just materialized near the colony's outer perimeter. Sleek vessels with coalition markings, their sensors probably working overtime trying to understand what they were seeing. This is Coalition Scout Vessel Meridian's Eye, a voice crackled over open channels. Unidentified station, you are in violation of established territory markers. Identify yourself immediately. Rashid exchanged glances with Minjun. They'd known this might happen eventually, but somehow he'd hoped for another decade or 2 of peaceful isolation. Open a channel. Are you sure? Minjun asked. We could fold away. They'd never find us again. We could, Rashid agreed. But I'm tired of hiding. Aren't you? He keyed the transmission. Coalition Vessel Meridian's Eye, this is Colony 17 of the Terran Federation. You're welcome to dock at Bay 5. We'll have coffee ready. The silence that followed lasted long enough for Rashid to wonder if they'd simply decided to open fire. Then, did you say? Terran? As in Earth? That's correct. Come on down. We don't bite. The coalition delegation arrived 30 minutes later, led by a young Calthari officer whose color-shifting skin betrayed her nervousness, flashing through worried purples and confused greens. Behind her came a Vren scientist whose tentacles kept twitching with what Rashid had learned to recognize as scholarly excitement, and a human liaison who looked like someone had just told him his house was full of ghosts. I'm Commander Eswelch, the Calthari said, her universal translator rendering her clicking language into smooth English. This is Dr. Vren and Liaison Officer David Torres. We're conducting routine surveys of unclaimed space and detected your station. Except our instruments insist this station doesn't exist. Your instruments are technically correct, Rashid said cheerfully, leading them through corridors filled with art installations, paintings and sculptures created by colonists who'd grown up knowing only stories of Earth. We're not in normal space. We're in folded space. Think of it like origami but with the fabric of reality. Dr. Vren's tentacles stopped twitching. That's impossible. Fold space theory requires energy outputs that would consume a star. It did, until Dr. Yuki Tanaka figured out how to do it with the energy output of a small city. We've refined her work considerably since then. Rashid gestured to a viewport showing the void between galaxies. Turns out when you trap humanity in a box for 80 years, they get creative about finding the exits. 80 years, Liaison Torres whispered. You've been out here for 80 years? Oh no, this colony is only 30 years old. We've built 47 others. Some around resource-rich asteroids in deep space, some in the gaps between galaxies, a few in places I probably shouldn't mention. Earth itself is doing well, by the way. Thanks for asking. Commander Esweldich's skin had gone a shade Rashid didn't recognize, something between awe and terror. The barrier? How did you get past the barrier? We didn't. We went around it. Technically, we went through spaces where it doesn't exist because those spaces don't exist either. It's complicated. Rashid stopped at a viewing gallery where children played in zero gravity, laughing as they chased floating toys. The coalition locked us in and expected us to wither. Instead, we learned to pick locks. They entered what Rashid called the heart of the colony, a massive spherical chamber where holographic displays showed everything humanity had built in isolation. Thriving settlements on Mars and Venus. Orbital habitats processing asteroids into raw materials. Scientific advances in medicine, engineering, and physics. And at the center of it all, Earth itself, green and blue and stubbornly alive. This can't be real, Torres breathed. We were told, everyone was told that Earth was dying. That the containment was a mercy, that you'd beg to be released within a generation. Yeah, well, Rashid said softly, humanity has a bad habit of not doing what we're told. Dr. Vren approached the displays with trembling tentacles. These propulsion systems, this manufacturing efficiency, your medical technology appears to be centuries ahead of coalition standard. How? Desperation is an excellent teacher, Rashid replied. When you have nothing to lose, you try things that sensible people consider too dangerous. When you can't rely on anyone else's help, you solve problems that seem impossible. When you know you only have a few decades to live, you don't waste time on committees and bureaucracy. You just build. Commander Esweldich's skin had settled into a deep, thoughtful blue. Why are you telling us this? You could have hidden. We would never have found you. Because hiding is what prey does, Rashid said, meeting her eyes. And we're not prey anymore. Earth is ready to talk to the coalition again, but not as supplicants. As equals. The Council will never accept. The Council will accept whatever reality they're presented with. Rashid pulled up a star map showing human colonies scattered across regions the coalition had declared empty and worthless. We don't need the coalition's permission anymore. We don't need their technology. We don't need their approval. But we're willing to share what we've learned, to trade, to cooperate. On our terms. He turned back to the viewport, watching Earth shine in the holographic display. Your people came to us 80 years ago and offered us a choice between submission and extinction. We chose neither. We chose ourselves. Tell your council that the barrier can come down now. Earth is ready to join the galaxy, not as children begging for guidance, but as adults who've earned their place at the table. Commander Esweltich was quiet for a long moment. Then her skin flashed with what Rashid had learned to recognize as respect. A brilliant, honest gold. I will deliver your message, Engineer Volkov. Though I suspect the council will be displeased. They usually are, Rashid said with a grin. But they'll come around. They always do, eventually. As the coalition delegation departed, Minjun joined him at the viewport. Do you think they'll actually take down the barrier? Eventually, Rashid said, watching their ships fold away into quantum space. But honestly, I'm not sure we need them to anymore. The stars beyond the colony gleamed like promises kept. Humanity had been cast out, locked away, told they weren't good enough for civilized space. So they'd built their own civilization in the places no one else had thought to look. The cage had become a chrysalis, and what emerged was something the galaxy had never seen before. A species that refused to break, refused to kneel, refused to be anything less than exactly who they chose to be. Earth had said no to the galaxy's demands. And in doing so they'd said yes to themselves. That, Rashid thought, was the most human thing they'd ever done.